Welcome to the Factal Forecast, a look at the week's biggest stories and what they mean from the editors at Factal. I'm Jimmy Lovaas. Today is August 6th, and in this week's forecast, we've got a migrant crisis in the Spanish territory of Ceuta, WorldPride March in Amsterdam, regional elections in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, several primary elections in the US, and a general election in Zambia. You can also read about these stories and more in our weekly newsletter, which you'll find a link to in the show notes. Up first, we'll take a look at the recent surge of migrants to the Spanish North African enclave of Ceuta. For more on that, I've got fellow Factal editor, Jess Fino. Hello, Jess.
Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm all right.
Well, thank you for your taking time with us today. This story we're going to talk about seemed to pop up out of nowhere, or at least to me, and I'm hoping you can get us all caught up on what we need to know. So, what's going on?
Of course. So last week, the Spanish enclave of Ceuta in Northern Africa saw an enormous influx of people trying to reach soil originated from Morocco. This was after misinformation spread on social media claiming that the Spanish border was open following recent changes in regulation on migrants arriving by sea. The more significant influx happened on Thursday, July 30th, with thousands of people trying to reach Ceuta in one single day. That day, the Moroccan border police deployed tear gas to limit the amount of arrivals at its Tarajal border. Also that day, the regional government in Ceuta requested the closure of the land border with Morocco and the deployment of military forces to try to control that surge of people arriving there.
And what's the latest? There been any new developments?
So most of the people have since returned to Morocco, with Spain's interior minister saying 70,000 of the 72,000 people that entered Ceuta last week have since returned. Unfortunately, at least 88 of them died while trying to cross into Ceuta, according to Spanish government officials. But also the Spanish Civil Guards Union estimate the number to be around 100 people. Also, the influx was not just in Ceuta, but also in the Spanish enclave of Melilla, where more than 1,000 migrants also arrived last week.
What sort of reactions have you seen to all this?
So this incident has quickly spread across the world, with videos and images of the arrivals of migrants being shared worldwide. It has sparked widespread debate about border regulations and migration policies. It also became politicized very quickly, both in Spain and abroad. In Spain, opposition parties blame Pedro Sánchez's government for creating this crisis and ask for the militarization and closure of the border. Elsewhere, Italy's Giorgia Meloni suspended the Schengen agreement with Spain for 1 month in the aftermath, with several other European countries criticizing Spain's progressive policies towards migration. This not only showcased the current division among European countries, but also US President Donald Trump, who has had a difficult relationship with the Spanish Prime Minister, spoke about the incident, calling it an invasion of a country. And the US State Department said it was the direct result of the Spanish government's efforts to enable and facilitate mass migration into Europe. But Sánchez has defended its country's position, criticizing Italians' reaction, saying it was contrary to European law, humanitarian law, and the principles of solidarity.
Well, probably a hard question to answer, but considering all that, what do you think folks ought to be watching for next?
So unfortunately, this is not the first incident that resulted in deaths and arrests. One of the reasons the surge happened is believed to have been a recent ruling by Spain's Supreme Court that found that migrants arriving by sea cannot be summarily returned without due progress, but it is believed this was deliberately misrepresented by smuggling networks to encourage people to attempt the crossing. So while most of the migrants have since returned, we could expect more to continue to attempt the journey. Additionally, this is not the only incident we've seen this summer. Recently, at a smaller scale, dozens of migrants were arrested in Estonia in connection with the migration pressure on the Latvian-Belarusian border. And this is still part of the fallout from the 2021 Belarusian migrant crisis. So both crises were initially provoked by misinformation and disinformation, and they are just a reminder of the power of misinformation on social media. Lastly, it will be interesting to see how the Ceuta incident affects the relationships between EU leaders and as well governments' focus on migration policies in the aftermath.
Well, Jess, we'll have to pause there for today. But again, thank you so much for your time and for keeping us plugged in. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
A major WorldPride March will take place in Amsterdam on Saturday. Organizers say the march will run from 3 to 6 p.m. local time. Participants will march through southern Amsterdam before gathering at the city's Museumplein. The event follows last weekend's annual Pride Boat Parade in the city. That event drew hundreds of thousands of participants, including openly gay Dutch Prime Minister Rob Jetten. Now, Amsterdam police have increased security measures for the city's Pride events after a deadly car ramming attack targeted a Pride event in Berlin in late July. Dutch authorities also recently issued a report outlining terror threats facing the country. The report highlighted jihadist-inspired threats, such as the alleged Berlin attacker, as well as so-called nihilistic extremism. The report left Netherlands' national threat level at 4 out of 5. The final round of elections for the regional parliament of disputed Pakistan-administered Jammu and Kashmir will take place Monday. Voting will be held in Poonch Division, a flashpoint of the current unrest over rights and representation. Deadly unrest over seats reserved for Indian Kashmiris who migrated to Pakistan prompted authorities to hold the elections in 3 phases instead of 1 on July 27th. Violence in the region erupted in June, particularly in Poonch. That's when the Pakistani government then banned the grassroots Jammu and Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee, accusing its members of attacking law enforcement and engaging in terrorism. The movement has denied those allegations and reported that police action had killed more than 80 civilians as of July 31st. Now, the region has been under a de facto lockdown, with internet access cut off since June 5th and travel advisories discouraging outsiders from visiting. Voting has ended in the Mirpur and Muzaffarabad divisions. Those elections were marred by a boycott by activists, allegations of vote rigging by the Pakistan People's Party, and more violence. The final phase in Poonch Division is scheduled to go ahead on August 10th, despite the tensions. Its capital, Rawalakot, has been the focus of protests, police action, paramilitary raids, and arrests, with more violence expected around the elections. Primary elections will take place in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Vermont, and Connecticut on Tuesday. Early voting is already underway. Voters will narrow the field of candidates ahead of the general election in November. The campaign for governor of Wisconsin has been particularly messy. Mainline Democrats are scrambling to catch up with frontrunner and Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong after the campaign of 2 leading contenders collapsed last month. Now, Tuesday's results will offer another important sign of the ideological struggle between progressives and moderates within the Democratic Party. A special primary will also take place Tuesday in South Carolina to replace the late U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. The short campaign and crowded ballot mean a runoff between the 2 leading candidates is likely on August 25th. A closely watched general election will take place in Zambia next Thursday. Voters will elect the country's president, members of the National Assembly, and local government officials, including councilors and council chairpersons. President Hakainde Hichilema is seeking a second term with the support of his UPND alliance. Hichilema won a landslide victory in the last election in 2021 and is hoping to secure an outright majority. Key opposition figure Brian Mundubile and his Tonse alliance are hoping to win enough support to force a runoff. Now, inflation and high food prices remain a challenge for Hichilema, who took office promising to revive the economy and tackle corruption. Election observers from the European Union will monitor the process. If no presidential candidate wins an outright majority, the two leading candidates will advance to a runoff. That would be a setback for Hichilema, who hopes to win another term easily. Control of the National Assembly is also at stake. The United Party for National Development is seeking to defend its majority and maintain control of both the executive branch and the legislature. As always, thank you for listening to the Factal Forecast. We publish our forward-looking podcast and newsletter each Thursday to help you get a jump start on the week ahead. Please subscribe and review wherever you find your podcasts, and we'd love it if you'd consider telling a friend about us. Today's episode includes work from Factal editors Alex Moore, Halima Mansour, Vivian Wang, and David Wiley. Our interview featured editor Jess Fino, and our podcast is produced and edited by me, Jimmy Lovaas. Our music comes courtesy of Andrew Gosby. Until next time, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or events we've missed, drop us a note by emailing hello@factal.com.